My name is Hank Hoving. I am the Territory Manager for Northern California. I cover the Petaluma area all the way up to Arcata, east over to Clear Lake, California. Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to be with us here this morning. I am the Territory Manager for BMD for the Greater Orange County area down in Southern California.
Thanks, Jeff. So what we're going to cover is the 2019 Building Energy Standards for Title 24, Part 6. Title 24 is a component of California's code regulations. So this covers the fenestration on U values, it covers fenestration on the glass makeup for buildings for residential and commercial. California is trying to get to net zero. So what happens over years is that they're trying to get to a net zero every 3 years. So where does that apply? We will cover areas where what does energy code apply? We will do how does it make sure we are in compliance? And also what we're seeing is a lot of aluminum out there. So large pieces of glass. We're going to recover how do we review center of glass and what is center of glass in this presentation. So Title 24 Energy Code is designed to reduce unnecessary energy consumption. What that means is higher bills on your gas, higher bills on your energy. So California is trying to get that down to a net zero. That's their main goal on this. Now, renewable energy does help that. That gets that down to a better energy efficiency. As you can see on the little scale on to the right, you can see solar and you can see how HVAC and lighting and different appliances help balance out that net zero energy. What we see is that renewable energy is a source. California is going to that. I've seen that in a lot more houses to help balance out that Title 24. It is a 13-part series through California. We're only going to cover Part 6. Part 6 is just a reference right to the energy code. As you can see on that little title there on the right, Part 6 California, but it is made up of 28 titles throughout the area. So it's a larger picture. For the window and door industry, we're really just concentrating on that Part 6. But note that Title 24 is broken down into 13 parts of that, but Part 6 is just based on the energy. You get into Part 7, you get into Part 8, they're talking about plumbing, they're talking about different parts of energy throughout the entire building itself. Now, this is done every 3 years, so we'll see another presentation on this in 2022. So I think you noticed in the beginning of the title, it showed 2019. So I'm not sure if that confused a lot of people, but that was the last time the code was updated. So again, we'll see this again in 2022. My expectation, U values will drop a little bit more, but there's ways that we'll cover in the presentation to help you get to that, those use factors. So I'm not sure if you guys seen this on plans a lot. This is the Title 24 report and certificate of compliance. This is really a chart that architects put together to meet Title 24. They have to submit this to the city. I like to review this to make sure, because in this section here, you can see the fenestration average U factor is a 0.31. As we all know, a 0.30 is usually required. So I asked myself, why is that? So that kind of tells me that they're using a different methodology in this makeup of this home. Now, I did research what Cheers was. I had no idea what Cheers was, so I kind of looked it up. It's California Home Energy Efficiency Rating System. So basically, it's a independent third party that forecasts the U values for Title 24. That's what it's called for. Here's the Title 24 Energy Report. So this is the report that we should look at closely. Just doing a blank call out of every single U value being the same. Sometimes they may have different glazing on different sides of the house. So that's certainly something to take into account. In this example, you can see that that solar heat gain factor is 0.32, which is kind of odd because we always use a lot of 366 glass, which that solar heat gain factor is much lower. So it's a balance of going back and forth. So again, look at this chart closely when you're looking at your U values and doing your quote for windows, because this can change and it can be something that can be very important to the getting their net zero or even getting their compliance. I know we're all over different areas, Southern California, Northern California, but Title 24 only applies to California. So if you have a job in Reno, if you have a job on Nevada, or just slightly over the border, make sure you look at their compliances, because Title 24 is only compliant with California. Now, there are different areas. For example, in my area, which I cover Northern California, I have two zones. I have a zone 1 and I have a zone 2. Those are much different requirements than they would be talking to a zone 11. So kind of look at that, kind of know this chart and know your U factors, because you may have a customer that may ask you why is the glazing higher or why is my glazing darker? So you can kind of explain those differences when talking about Title 24 and why you're using certain glazings in your quote. So again, you can see zone 2 with the solar heat gain. Now there's different perspectives that you can use to get to a different solar heat gain number. Jeff's going to cover that a little more in detail and how you can achieve those numbers.
Cool. Thank you, Hank. So I'm sure everyone is pretty aware at this point that your current Title 24 requirements for California are the 0.30 on your U factor and a 0.23 on your solar heat gain coefficient. This slide is just showing that there's reference material available online. So if you go to the www.energy.ca.gov, the link at the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, that will take you into a page where you can find more in-depth information about Title 24. So if you needed some guidance on how to navigate that and get to the proper area specifically for your doors and windows, you could just reach out to your territory manager and they should be able to help you get to the correct area on that page. So you can dive into that if you wanted to get some more information on the Title 24 requirements. You could hit that next slide, please, Hank. So how do we comply with Title 24? So there's actually two different methods that you can apply to get those numbers. So the first is the prescriptive method, and that's going to be your more common method of where each window and door meets those Title 24 requirements. So each window and door would meet the 0.30 on the U factor and the 0.23 on the solar heat gain coefficient. So you got to hit those numbers are better to meet the prescriptive method. But for product that you're using that may not have those solar heat gain coefficients and U factors to meet those requirements, you are able to go through what is called the performance method. And that is something that requires the whole building as a whole to perform to a certain standard. So you do have to take a little bit of a different approach when using the performance method. You do have to get a consultant to come in and kind of or basically rate things, and you got to amp up things in other areas to make those windows acceptable, those windows and doors with those lower ratings. So with the performance method, it basically allows you to offset those values with different materials such as HVAC, your wall ratings, different things of that, to get lower ratings on your windows and doors to have those be acceptable. Next slide, please. All right, so when using that performance rating or performance method, you will, in most cases, need to get what is called a HERS energy rater out there. So if you wish to use a window or door that is not rated, you will need to get a HERS rater to inspect and evaluate the building as a whole, and design offsets using energy-saving materials to achieve the required values. So basically, they're going to come in, rate the entire house as a whole, tell you what you need with your HVAC, wall ratings, different aspects of that in order to use the windows with the values greater than the 0.30 and the 0.23 for those Title 24 numbers. So when using that performance method, there's a little more that goes into it, because you do have to get this consultant out there, go through everything. It is a third-party inspector. So just something you need to be aware of when you are taking the performance method approach, that there's a lot more that goes into it rather than just getting those prescriptive numbers. You got to get that consultant out there, walk the job, and then kind of figure out what you need with everything else within the structure. Next slide. So when you're dealing with systems that aren't rated, you might hear the term center of glass ratings. So when you're dealing with center of glass values, those aren't taking the entire unit into effect. So it's not accounting for your frame, your window frame or door frame or sash. It's basically rating the center of the glass unit, and that's it. So when you put that into a unrated unit and you're getting center of glass values, it is for the glass only. It's not a rating for the entire window or door unit. So center of glass is possible. You still can get by with using center of glass values, but you're going to be falling more into the performance method when you're using these, and you're going to need to get your HERS rater out there and everything to kind of figure out what you will need to make those values work. So in OMS, there is a way to always check the values of what you're quoting. So once you have a quote put together, you have some line items in there, have that project built up, you can go up to the More Actions tab, and you're going to notice on the drop down there's a selection for Performance Summary. And when you select that, it's going to generate an Excel spreadsheet for you that has a breakdown of your U factor and solar heat gain coefficients for each unit. So you can see at the bottom of the page, as an example, we've got some modern, some ultimate, ultimate wood, elevated, and essential, a little mix of everything. And over on the right side, you can see that it's breaking it down by U factor and solar heat gain coefficient for you, so you know where you're landing with those units. And then obviously you can see things are going to vary a little bit depending on the collection type that you're using and the actual unit type. So with Marvin, you typically don't have to worry about units not meeting those values. You just throw some title, or typically use low E366 glass, and it should get you there. So in most cases with Marvin product, you are able to meet the prescriptive values for your projects. So in summary, just always remember, in California, we must always meet Title 24 in some way or another, whether it is through the prescriptive or performance method. Title 24 requirements vary in locations, so just know where you're at, know where your project's at and what zone it's at, and just understand what the requirements are for those for each location. There's two paths to meet Title 24, the prescriptive and the performance. And when using the performance method, a HERS provider must be employed. Your U value and solar heat gain coefficients can found for most projects within OMS. So like we went over, you can run that report and get all your values right in OMS for your Marvin projects. And then always, whenever in doubt, always ask homeowner, architect, whoever. If you're not seeing anything on the plans, don't be afraid to ask questions about it. Rather get clarification on the front end rather than running into trouble on the post-sale end of things when they're going to install those windows and get the inspector out there and realize there's an issue. So don't be afraid to ask questions. You want to jump on the frequently asked questions, Hank? Or?
Sure can.
Cool.
So can I use the prescriptive method if I have a window that's tested? No, you cannot. There has to be that sticker on it. So just make sure that that is available on there, because you don't want the inspector to walk the home and have no sticker. You will need that HERS rating then if that's the case. Can I use center of glass values? No. I did see a question come through with Chip about will center of glass numbers be available on units that have not been tested in OMS? So Marvin uses test the whole entire frame and all the glass is one unit. They do not use center of glass. So on larger units, kind of like we see in aluminum, they just test the glass. They don't test the whole entire unit. Can I see tested values in OMS? Yes. Should I always check? Yes. Answering a couple questions. Thank you guys for the questions. I love the interaction. We did see one here from Jeff. Title 24 looks like it has a numbers weighted average. Will our performance report provide weighted averages at some time in the future? I believe so. From what I've been doing in right now is taking that Excel spreadsheet and creating an average for my customers at the very bottom of the page. So you're doing the average for them as a way to help them out. But currently Marvin does not offer a weighted average for all those U values in the report. But yes, you're right, Jeff. I can see them probably doing something like that in the future, but at this time that is not available. Talking from Joe here, it says, can we talk a little bit about low ERS, low ELR, and low 366, and when these might be appropriate? So ERS and low ELR, it depends on the type of glass that you're looking for. So ERS is really pretty much I-89 on that. So if you're looking for a low U value, that extra low E is going to go on the inside of your house on the pane. So that helps us get down to a better U value number on that. But again, you may get more condensation on the glass. So it's a trade-off back and forth. There is a cost to it too. So yes, you will get some trade-off on that. But yes, that is ERS is probably your next best step, because you can kind of see in an example on this picture here that the U value has gone down a little bit with that ERS, quite a bit just from a low E2 argon. So it does help you in that number. Now, low ELR is we want a higher solar heat gain. Now, we have jobs on the coast where you may want more sun to come through. So that's usually when you want more solar heat gain on that. So it's weighing back and forth. So I would check that with your architect because again, that prescriptive method might come to play more often.
And then in regards to your U factor and U value, those terms, those are interchangeable. So those are the same, have the same terminology. So they're interchangeable. U factor, U value, same thing, same difference.
And we got one more question from Jeff here. Is there a stipulation in Title 24 which allows you to remove an amount of fenestration from the weighted average? I have read that you can remove up to 75 square feet, but I'm confused by that and wondering if you have insight about that. I'm not aware of that, Jeff. Jeff, do you have an idea about that one at all? I would check. And the city might be different.
Yeah, I haven't run into anything of that nature. It's definitely something we could look into for you, Jeff. But off the top of my head, I don't have an answer for you on that one right now.
Now, Jeff, I've seen in certain cities and counties that may change a bit from city to city. So I would double check with your city and county. I've seen a couple situations where the city has different stipulations within those weighted averages and where you can remove that 75 square feet. So what I'll say is check with your city and your contractor and architect from there. No, I thank you for the questions. I think the questions are really good. I think there's a couple out there. Like Jeff was saying earlier slides, if you don't know, just ask. Sometimes if say there's not a U value on your OMS report, just ask. We can get that information from Marvin in there. So please make sure you understand Title 24. Customers may have questions about it. So just make sure you check that cheers, check the U values and understand what the two perspectives are.
And know your zone, know where you're at. All right, so if there aren't any other questions, oh, there's one for Mary Ann. Can you explain default value versus tested values?
A default value, I've never heard of a default value. I'd heard of the tested value, of course, because those are actually tested from Marvin, tested from different manufacturers. A default value, from my understanding, is that they're using a like or similar product that is similar to that. So there's a slight difference in that. And just knowing what is actually tested and what is not tested, I would say that's your best answer to that, Marianne.
I've also had
I
situations where we used basically center of glass as a default value for an untested product. So I've seen situations like that where that value was used for that situation.
My understanding is normally when if you have a unit that does not carry a tested value, that the only option is to go to a default. And that means the standard that's been established for that makeup, that glass makeup, which is usually much higher than what you're going to have for an actual tested
Right.
unit. That's
Right.
my understanding.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you everybody for attending. Jeff and I will hang around here for the next 5-10 minutes. If you have questions, please feel free to stick around and ask them. We can certainly answer those questions.